Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Friday Namaste experience. So happy to be back in the saddle at Namaste Village. Look out and see all these wonderful shiny faces and all of you guys as well. So this morning, we are going back to story time. I see Chris is sitting here reading. Chris, can you bring that up here for a second? That's okay, bring it up here. It's easier because I'm full screen, they won't see it. He's sitting here reading this lovely book, St. Francis and the Animals Who Loved Him. And we love stories. Here you go, Chris. We love stories. This is why all the truly great teachers, how did they teach? Parables and stories. They share the things that people can relate to. They don't offer high, spiritual concepts because they engage the mind. Stories are different. I like to think that stories are like music. They slip through the back door. When intellectual information comes in through the front door of our consciousness, it also has to pass through all of the filters that we have gathered there based upon our past, things that have happened, things that haven't happened, traumas, whatever it may be, all of these filters, and the information that we hear or that is shared has to go through these filters. And by the time that energy or that information gets through, only a limited amount of it is still there, available. But things like music and stories, it's like they slip into the back door where there are no filters and they enter directly into the heart. Once again, Jesus was one of the greatest storytellers in history. And he would tell stories about sheep and things that people of his time could relate to. Often it's harder for us to relate to them because we didn't live in that time, but a good storyteller will do the same. I'm actually reading a book, I think it's called The Story of Ireland. It's a wonderful book about storytelling. And that was a profession back in the day. These great storytellers would go from town to town before there were television and movies and things. And everyone in the town would gather and this storyteller would enthrall them with stories about history and great dramas. Well, I'm a bit of a storyteller as well. So today I have two stories for you. We're going to talk about each one. And then when I'm done, we'll bring Vicky in. I think we have the problem solved that we had yesterday with the sound. So let's talk first about a story that's called How to Make Gold Out of a Brick. This is a story that came to me a couple of days ago. How to make gold out of a brick. And in all of these stories, there's the master. The master could be anyone that you imagine. And then there are the disciples. A particular disciple had been sitting for 3 days and 3 nights in perfect meditation pose, a very serious look on his face. The master came up to him and asked, "What are you doing?" If it had been anyone other than the master who asked this question, the disciple would have snapped at them, saying, "Why are you interrupting my meditation?" But when he opened his eyes and saw the master standing there, he composed himself. "I intend to stay here meditating until I reach enlightenment," the disciple told him. "Ah, I see," said the master. And then he looked around himself until he saw an old brick lying on the ground. He picked up the brick and took the fine piece of cloth that was wrapped around his waist, and he began rubbing the cloth against the brick vigorously. After several minutes of this, the disciple asked, "Why are you rubbing that brick with so much effort? Do you expect it to suddenly change?" "Oh, yes. the master said to him. I'm going to rub and rub until it turns a brick into gold. But master, the disciple said, you could rub that brick for days, even weeks, but it will never turn to gold. It's not the nature of the brick. The master sighed and stopped rubbing. You're probably right, he said. And neither will... Oh, Mari, you got unmuted, Mari. Make sure you guys stay muted. Let me back up. You interrupted my story. The master sighed and stopped rubbing. You're probably right, he said. And neither will you become enlightened by engaging your mind in such a manner. It is no different than the brick. If you want to be enlightened, throw your mind away, and I will do the same with this old brick. So that's our first story. It reminds me also of the story of the great Buddha who sat next to a tree in India for years and years and years and years and years and years and years, waiting for enlightenment. This is just a little add-on story. This is not the second story. He sat next to the tree, meditating, waiting for something to change, for the lights to start to flash and for everything to suddenly turn into light and lift off the ground, whatever it is that he thought would happen, whatever any of us think is going to happen when we become enlightened. And he's waiting for so many years. He's being so diligent. And suddenly a fly lands right in here in his forehead. And he goes to whack the fly. And in that same exact moment, he achieves enlightenment. In that moment. And to this day, you can still go to that part of India and watch all of his disciples sitting next to trees. It's not what you do. Enlightenment doesn't come from doing anything. It comes from being everything, relaxing into that beingness, the truth that has always been true. But we're so convinced that we have to do something. We have to read books. We have to go to masters and teachers and workshops and whatever it may be, communities like Namaste, whatever it may be. And all this master is saying is just be who you've always been. Relax into that beingness. You don't have to do anything. It's a good message, don't you think? Well, and here's the thing about that. We always want to understand it intellectually. We want someone to explain it to us. Here, we talk about the experience a lot, the experience of awakening, not the idea or the intellectual discovery, but the experience, just knowing what has always been known. And so this next story is all about that experience and the disciples that wanted it explained to them and how the master does that. So this story is called The Scent of the Rose. You ready?
Yes.
The disciples had been asking the master to describe to them the experience of whole-mindedness for many weeks. Until then, he would only allude to it generally, speaking around the experience, but never directly to it. They were sitting in a garden one afternoon when one of the senior disciples turned to the master and said, "We know that your mind is ever turned toward God and that you are in a constant experience of divine light. But to us, you never reveal the secret. Just once, we pray, tell us what we do know, what you do know, that we may enjoy what you also enjoy." The master smiled, then stood up and picked a rose from a rose bush. Then he handed the rose to the disciple and said, "Inhale the fragrance of this rose. And then have everyone sitting here do the same. The disciple did as he was told, breathing in the scent of the beautiful flower, and then passed it to the others that were sitting there. When they were done, they passed the rose back to the master. Each one of you has inhaled the fragrance, he said to them. Whoever can describe this with words, speak now. Whoever can describe the scent of a rose, speak now. The disciples looked at each other, wondering who would speak first. And it wasn't long before they realized that none of them could sufficiently describe the beautiful scent that they had experienced. Think about that for a moment. If you had to describe in concepts the experience of the scent of a flower, what words could you possibly use that would really do it? You can't. The master then said, if you want to know what it's like to be enlightened, stop trying to describe what it's like to be enlightened. Simply stand in the light and radiate the same. Then, instead of you knowing what it's like to be enlightened, the light will know what it's like to be you. Let me read that last sentence again. Really take this one in. Simply stand in the light and radiate the same. Then, instead of you knowing what it's like to be enlightened, the light will know what it's like to be you. Feel that. Don't think about it, but feel that. The light will know what it's like to be you, to be an expression that you call you, until the you that you thought you were dissolves into the light. The scent of a rose. We can't describe it. One can never describe the experience of what it means to be awake, but they can hand you a rose. They can hand you anything. Put a brother or a sister in front of you and just say, look into their eyes. For some reason, stories come into my mind. I may have mentioned this, and I certainly won't mention names, but there was a teacher that I did a workshop with once. Someone that many considered to be enlightened. And at the end of the workshop, people are expressing their gratitude or whatever else they wanted to say about the weekend. And there was an older woman who looked to this man and said, I just want to say, I'm so happy to finally know what it feels like to hug an enlightened being. And I thought, okay, tell him, give it to him. Say something like, all you need to do is to wrap your arms around yourself. Stand in the light, wrap your arms around yourself, and you will know what it's like to hug an enlightened, or look into the eyes of the person next to you, anyone. And if you have eyes to see, to truly see, then you will know what it's like to look into the eyes of an enlightened. And I'm thinking, okay, say something great like that. Give the teaching. And this person said, thank you. No. Because now, by saying something like, yes, now you know what it's like to hug an enlightened being, me, all you're doing is increasing the distance. We're not here to increase the distance between the one who is awake and the one who is not. We're here to come together in the experience that there is nothing but that. There's nothing but the light. The one who enjoys standing on the pedestal probably shouldn't be there. Because if you're enjoying that and you like the way people look at you, then it's satisfying something in you that's still lacking. That's why people like Vicky and me, and certainly I know for me, I just know that what I have to share I am much more valuable to anyone as you are when we're right there together. When I'm not pretending to be something, it gives you permission to not pretend to be something other than the light. But if I stand above you like the great master and there's distance, it's much easier for the ego to project specialness. So pick a rose and smell it. Don't try to describe it, just enjoy it. Look into the eyes of a brother or a sister who's near you and see them, really see them. And then you'll know what it's like to see someone who is awake. I'm looking at the back of the room. Is this the most current lesson from A Course in Miracles? I trust my brother who is one with me. It feels like that was yesterday. Was that yesterday?
Yes.
Anybody know what today's lesson is? Is that today's lesson? Okay.
I will be still a moment and go home.
I will be still a moment and go home. I can't actually, it might be better to say, or at least more, even closer to the mark. I will be still for a moment and realize I never left my home. I never left heaven. And that's the only place there is truly heaven. So, Victoria, one who never left heaven, what do you want to share about all these stories?
Good morning, Brother James. I have a lot to share, but I'll keep it short. This is a word from the party division. This is just a message from the division that celebrates all the time. You know, when so many paths will say, you know, there's a high road, a low road, there's the way of the tears, and there's the way of rejoicing. There is a way of rejoicing. And because it's the 4th of July in America, this is a perfect time, right? To celebrate freedom. And what is it? Freedom, from oppression of the ego, freedom of love to be what it is. Anyway, I love the stories. Thank you for those stories because they're short and simple, like all the stories of all the kings that you have, and the treasury in this little book is wonderful. But and if you look at today's unity lesson, it's carefree. And I want to mention that the last year or 6 months anyway of the unity messages, it's as if the vibration, the frequency has been upped a bit. So I really want to mention that the unity daily word lessons have really been reaching out and open much more than I ever remember them. But carefree, this is a time, perhaps, if we want it to be and if we let it to be, for us to be the celebration of life, of freedom, of love over all fear. And when we celebrate, when we playfully celebrate, what we're doing is throwing our mind away. We're throwing our need to understand everything. We're tossing it and being simply present in appreciating and smelling every rose. For me, I smell the hummus, I smell the rose, I smell the eggs frying up in the pan. If we take on the identity of being who we are, we have nothing left to do but celebrate and rejoice. Because if we are God's children, what can we do except say thank you? Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for letting my life be free, and that I can surrender. Took on a bad understanding, thinking we're giving up something. But surrender is just that I can let go of that kind of what I used to think of as responsibility and take on the only responsibility of being the child of the divine in an ever-present kingdom. I remember at a particular experience this brought to mind. I used to take little groups to St. John in the Virgin Islands. Any of you have been there, you'll know its incredible beauty. And it was the easiest of all retreats I ever was part of, because the beauty was so compelling and is still so compelling that if we can just get out of our heads and stand aside, it draws us in the way we can draw one another in when we are reflecting only God's love and beauty and safety. Carefree, like today's lesson, totally dependent on the love of God. And so on this particular retreat with this group, my suggestion was no one speak at all about the past or the future for the whole time, 10 days. Nobody can talk, and that was the only guidance. Let's just stay present and enjoy everything. Enjoy each other, enjoy the beach. That was the whole program. Enjoy everything. Because when we are present and we can enjoy everything, life opens up in us, and we naturally are the celebration of God's love wherever we find ourselves, and everyone wants to become part of the party. At the end of that time that we were all together, two people had visions, both of Mary for some reason, real beautiful little experiences, and we ended up with a party inviting everyone that we knew on the island to a big dinner, because it is impossible not to include and join and celebrate if we can just be ourselves, just be the childlike kid that we always wanted to be, the childlike kid that we want every child in our care to be. Don't we all support kids to be themselves? Go ahead, write on the wall or write on the, scribble on whatever. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful. And we celebrate it.
I never did that.
You never did. My mother did that. She was a very wise woman. But, or else put paper up and let them scribble on the paper. But we are that. And if we let go of any need to understand anything, and this is a weekend, at least in America, but every day is a time to celebrate being free as God's children, and then witnessing how He cares for us and how it's given to us to naturally care for each other. So from the party division on the East Coast of the United States, I'm just saying, this is a grand time to be the parade. That's what someone said. I'm a walking parade these days. I've already been down to the pool and met everybody down there. And you know, what we do is we give each other the freedom and the opportunity to be themselves when we are ourselves. That's really all it is. And then the experience of feeling love comes to us and bubbles up in us as a byproduct. It's nothing we seek for. It's something we have to give. So I've always found when we live in that party rejoicing, it's really a rejoicing over the gift of life that we've been given. It naturally does attract our brothers, and everywhere we go becomes a walking party of true celebration, of carefree carelessness. Cast your cares upon Him, for He cares for us.
That's
So,
beautiful. Hey, Vicki, we're starting to lose you. There's
I know, I'm sorry, the window's open. I'm sorry, and they're always,
a loud sound.
yeah, sorry, please. Okay, I'll mute now. Anyway, celebrate, everyone.
Celebrate, dance to the music. You know, I love even looking out here, and I see Bob Davis, for example. He's got the exact same thing around his neck, and I think we should all, for maybe next week, I'm going to put us on gallery so we can see each other. Let's all just wear funky, fun things like Vicki. I see Bob's doing it already. Oh, and I see there's Judy. She's got something fun on her head. Wow, look at this. This is definitely the party division. I love it. And you know, these stories, to me, the stories just kind of come, and I just write them out on my phone, and it's so fun to share them. So thank you so much. Ravi, did you hear the stories? I won't come to you, don't worry. It's like, Ravi. No, see, Ravi, what's happening to Ravi, which is exactly what happens, is the mind begins to expand to the point that the space between the thoughts begins to increase. And you may think that you're losing it. No, you're getting it. This is This is why one of the books that I don't know if Stevens is here right now, but Reverend Stephen, the Unity minister, and I are working on a book called The 10 Symptoms of Enlightenment. That's one of them. The space between the thought. And that's when stories can be the most helpful, because you can relax. You can just listen, and you can let the story take you into the lesson rather than trying to get there. But in the end, it all comes down to the final line in today's second story. I'm going to read it to you one more time and really take it in. Simply stand in the light and radiate the same. Then, instead of you knowing what it's like to be enlightened, the light will know what it's like to be you, the true you, who you really are, who you couldn't stop being if you tried, and boy, have you tried. You have tried so hard to be something other than the truth of who you are. Why? It has cost us so much. Why not just, as Vicky says, celebrate the fact that I was wrong, I lost, yay. To me, Independence Day is really Dependence Day. But I'm going to depend completely on that I lost the game of trying to separate from the inseparable. I am now and will always remain one with all there is, one with love itself. We come together, we join, and we share, and we radiate together, and the light begins to get brighter and brighter to the point that it takes over the whole place. That's what's happening at Namaste Village, whether you're here physically or whether you're just tracking us wherever you are in the world. That's what's happening. The light is beginning to realize, to see through, realize what it's like to be you. Amen.
Amen.
That's it. So, Vicky, any final words? You're good? All right. Calico, I didn't see you at breakfast. Are you out there? Calico may be sleeping in today.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are, dear. Would you like to share anything before we go?
I just this last thing that you were saying was so perfect. It's Dependence Day. And I don't know, something just landed when you said it. And it's like, oh, yeah, I want to be completely consumed. I want my mind to be completely consumed by love. And it's like, I want to depend on that, so that in those moments when I have a flurry of some kind of judgment that enters my mind, is to remember, no, I'm consumed by love. And so there was something about it's Dependence Day. I don't need to separate anymore. I've done that my whole life. I'm done separating. And it's like, I want to be completely dependent. So thank you for that. That was exactly what I needed to hear today. And, there was a bit of judgment on myself for something that I saw myself doing. And it's kind of like, it doesn't matter, because it's all coming from this complete dependence on love. And that was very helpful. So thank you so much, James.
You're welcome. Yeah. We've always been taught that being independent, this is the way to be, to stand on our own, to be separate and isolated. Now we're realizing that the opposite, to depend upon, like children, to depend upon the divine for everything in every moment. So follow me. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. Why would you wait for heaven when you are merely covering your eyes? It is there if you would, but open now and realize you never left your home. Just realize that you're not alone. Here we go. The peace of God is shining in me now, shining right now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. Let it shine. The peace of God is shining in me now. And so it is. Amen, amen, amen.
Y punto.
Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful weekend.
God bless us all.
See you on Sunday. God bless us all.
Happy Friday.
Love you all.
Bye, everybody.